The Four Suspects by Agatha Christie, gone WendyMcCandy. For fans of the original, I add 2 classic, legally cost-free adaptations of the story to the info below the video on YouTube. Synopsis: Dr. Rosen, now living in England, was instrumental in bringing down a German secret society and expects to be murdered in retribution. He lives in a secluded cottage with 4 others. When he is found dead at the bottom of the stairs, it's believed he was pushed. All 4 of the other residents claim to have been out of the house at the time, but no one can vouch for anyone else, leaving open the possibility that any of the 4 could be the guilty party. Welcoming words. While I don't need to be German to realize that a certain percentage of the Brexit island dwellers, the dear British and Welsh, have always been dull, daft, and boring. Here, I honor my grandmother, late Granny McCandy, who certainly was the bestie of Jane Marple. If not, we fake the official papers and hack the databases. LMFAO. Editorial note: names and grammar have been modernized and candied, as the content creator barely survived his first time annoying WendyMcCandy, and even an ex-homeless looking at Lady Olenna Tyrell in Game of Thrones. So sorry, King Geoffrey the Purple, would show respect to Granny McCandy, even when aware that it is only WendyMcCandy with grayed hair and a stolen costume. The story remake begins. The conversation lingered on the shadowy realm of unacknowledged and unpunished crimes. Each participant contributed their thoughts. Colonel Blunt, with his jovial demeanor, his plump, amiable wife, the insightful Jane Hollister, the astute Dr. Lloyd, and even the venerable Miss Marple. Yet, the one individual most expected to share his insights remained silent. Sir Henry Cumberbatch, the former Commissioner of Scotland Yard, sat quietly, stroking his moustache with a faint smile, as if entertained by some private contemplation. "Sir Henry," Mrs. Blunt finally interjected, her voice tinged with urgency, "if you remain silent, I might just scream. Are there numerous crimes that go unpunished or not?" "You're envisioning the sensational headlines, Miss Blunt. Enraged public newspapers going, 'Scotland Yard at fault again,' followed by a litany of unsolved enigmas. Which, I assume, constitutes a mere fraction of the total," Dr. Lloyd speculated. "Indeed, that is correct. The multitude of crimes resolved and their perpetrators brought to justice rarely receive the accolades they deserve. However, that is not the crux of the matter, is it? When you discuss undiscovered and unresolved crimes, you are addressing 2 distinct categories. The former encompasses all those offenses Scotland Yard remains unaware of, the transgressions that lie hidden from all." "But surely, there can't be many of those," Miss Blunt inquired, a hint of disbelief in her tone. "Can't there?" "Sir Henry, you cannot be suggesting there are." "I would venture," Miss Marple remarked thoughtfully, "that the number must indeed be substantial." The charming old lady, with her timeless grace, delivered her assertion with serene conviction. "My dear Miss Marple," Colonel Blunt responded, bemused. "Indeed," Miss Marple continued, "many individuals lack discernment, and the foolish are inevitably exposed, no matter their intentions. Yet there exists a considerable number of astute individuals, and one can only shudder at the potential havoc they could wreak, were it not for their firmly entrenched principles." "Yes," Sir Henry acknowledged, "there are indeed many who are not foolish. How often does a crime surface due to sheer incompetence, prompting one to ponder, had it not been for this blunder, would anyone have ever been the wiser?" "But that's quite grave, Cumberbatch," Colonel Blunt remarked, his tone serious. "Very grave indeed." "Is it?" "What do you mean? It certainly is, without a doubt. You assert that crime goes unpunished, but does it truly? Perhaps unpunished by the law, yet cause and effect operate beyond it. To claim that every crime carries its own punishment may sound trite, yet in my view, it is profoundly true." "Perhaps indeed," Colonel Blunt conceded. "Yet that does not diminish the seriousness, seriousness." He faltered, momentarily at a loss for words. Sir Henry Cumberbatch smiled knowingly. "99 out of 100 would likely share your perspective," he said. "But in truth, guilt is not what matters most. It is innocence. That is the realization that eludes so many." "I must confess, I find myself struggling to understand," Jane Hollister admitted, her brow knitted in perplexity. "I comprehend it well," replied Miss Marple with calm assurance. "When Mrs. Trent discovered that half a crown was missing from her bag, the individual most affected was the daily woman, Mrs. Arthur. Naturally, the Trents suspected her. However, being compassionate souls, aware of her large family and a husband prone to drink, they hesitated to act too harshly. Yet their perception shifted, and they refrained from entrusting her with the care of their home during their absence, which profoundly impacted her standing. Gradually, others began to share this sentiment. Then, in a twist of fate, it was revealed that the true culprit was the governess, caught in a moment of chance, though I prefer to label it as providence. This, I believe, aligns with what Sir Henry intends to convey. Most would fixate solely on the identity of the thief, only to discover it was the most unexpected individual, just as in Detective Taylor's. Yet the person for whom it was a matter of life and death was poor Mrs. Arthur, who bore no guilt. Isn't that precisely what you mean, Sir Henry? Indeed, Miss Marple, your insight is spot on. Mrs. Arthur was fortunate in the instance you recount. Her innocence was ultimately unveiled. However, many individuals traverse their lives burdened by the weight of unjust suspicions. "Are you reflecting on a specific case, Sir Henry?" inquired Miss Blunt, her gaze sharp and discerning. "Indeed, Miss Blunt, I am. It's a rather intriguing case, one where we suspect murder has occurred, yet the possibility of proving it remains elusive." "Poison, perhaps," Jane breathed, her eyes wide with intrigue. "Something untraceable." Dr. Lloyd shifted uneasily, and Sir Henry shook his head. "No, dear lady, not the elusive arrow poison of South American tribes. I wish it were something so exotic. Instead, we are faced with something far more mundane, so commonplace, in fact, that there is no hope of attributing the act to its perpetrator. An elderly gentleman met his demise after a fall, one of those unfortunate accidents that happen all too frequently." "But what truly transpired?" Jane pressed, her curiosity piqued. "Who can say?" Sir Henry shrugged, a hint of resignation in his tone. "A push from behind, a piece of string or cotton artfully placed across the stairs and whisked away afterward. Such mysteries remain forever unsolved." "Yet you suspect it was not merely an accident. What leads you to that conclusion?" the doctor queried. "That's a rather extensive tale, but yes, we are fairly certain. As I mentioned, there's little hope of holding anyone accountable. The evidence is far too insubstantial. However, there lies another facet to this case, the aspect I previously referenced. There were 4 individuals who could have committed the act. One is indeed guilty, while the other 3 are innocent. Unless the truth is unearthed, those 3 will continue to live under the oppressive shadow of doubt." "I believe," Miss Blunt interjected, "that we would benefit from hearing your lengthy narrative." "I can condense it considerably, actually," Sir Henry replied. "The story begins with a German secret society known as the Schwarz Hand, which translates to the Black Hand, a group reminiscent of the Camorra or Mafia, or at least, what most people envision of it. It was an operation steeped in blackmail and intimidation, which emerged suddenly after the war and expanded at an alarming rate, ensnaring countless victims. The authorities struggled to combat it, as its secrets were fiercely protected, making it nearly impossible to find anyone willing to betray the organization. While little was understood about it in England, its effects in Germany were crippling. The society was ultimately dismantled through the efforts of a remarkable man, Dr. Rosen, who once held a prominent position in the Secret Service. He infiltrated its inner circle and played a crucial role in its downfall. However, this made him a target, and it was deemed prudent for him to leave Germany, at least temporarily. He arrived in England, accompanied by letters of introduction from the Berlin police. During our personal meeting, he conveyed a perspective that was both detached and accepting. He harbored no illusions about his future. "They will come for me, Sir Henry," he stated, his voice deep and resonant with only a subtle accent betraying his origins. "It is a certainty. I am prepared. I accepted this risk when I embarked on this endeavor. I have accomplished what I set out to achieve. The organization will never be reassembled. Yet many of its members remain at large, and they will seek the only retribution they can, my life. It's merely a matter of time, but I wish for that time to be as lengthy as possible. I am in the process of compiling and editing some extraordinarily valuable material, the culmination of my life's work. I hope to complete my task, if fate allows." He spoke with a simplicity that bore an undeniable grandeur, which I could not help but admire. I assured him we would take every precaution, but he waved my concerns aside. "One day, sooner or later, they will find me," he reiterated. "When that day arrives, do not trouble yourself. I have no doubt you will have done everything within your power." He proceeded to unveil his plans, which were refreshingly straightforward. He envisioned a quaint cottage nestled in the countryside, a sanctuary where he could embrace tranquility and immerse himself in his work. Ultimately, he chose a serene village in Somerset, King's Gaddis, a place remarkably untouched by the encroachments of modern civilization, located 7 miles from the nearest railway station. He acquired a delightful cottage, made several thoughtful improvements, and settled in with a profound sense of contentment. His household comprised his niece, Greta, a diligent secretary, a devoted old German servant who had loyally served him for nearly 4 decades, and an outside handyman and gardener, a local of King's Gaddis. "The 4 suspects," Dr. Lloyd said softly, his voice barely rising above the stillness. Indeed, the 4 suspects. There's little more to convey. Life in King's Gaddis unfolded peacefully for 5 months until tragedy struck. One fateful morning, Dr. Rosen tumbled down the stairs and was discovered lifeless half an hour later. At the moment of the accident, Gertrude claimed to be in her kitchen, the door firmly shut, insisting she heard nothing. Frailene Greta asserted she was in the garden, diligently planting bulbs again, so she claimed. The gardener, Dobbs, was tucked away in the small potting shed, enjoying his aliveness, such was his account, and the secretary was out for a stroll, relying solely on his own word. Alibis were conspicuously absent. None could corroborate another's tale. Yet one truth stood firm. No outsider could have committed the act, for a stranger in the close-knit village of King's Gaddis would not go unnoticed. Both the front and back doors were securely locked, each member of the household possessing their own key. Thus, the focus narrows to those 4 individuals, and yet each appears above suspicion. Greta, the beloved niece, Gertrude with her 4 decades of unwavering loyalty, Dobbs, a lifelong resident of King's Gaddis, and Charles Templeton, the secretary. "Yes," Colonel Blunt interjected. "What of him? He strikes me as the most dubious character. What do you know about him?" "It is my knowledge of him that exonerated him entirely, at least at that moment," Sir Henry responded gravely. "You see, Charles Templeton was one of my associates." "Oh," Colonel Blunt exclaimed, visibly taken aback. "Yes, I sought to have someone discreetly placed, without stirring gossip in the village. Dr. Rosen genuinely required a secretary. I entrusted Templeton with the role. He is a gentleman of high caliber, fluent in German, and altogether an exceptionally capable individual." "But then whom do you suspect?" Mrs. Blunt inquired, her tone laced with confusion. "They all seem so, well, implausible." "Yes, it may appear so. Yet one can view the matter from a different perspective. Frailene Greta, while his niece and a truly beautiful girl, serves as a reminder that the ravages of war often twist the bonds of family, brother against brother, father against son. Even the gentlest souls have been known to commit astonishing acts. The same could be said for Gertrude, who can say what hidden forces may be at play in her life. Perhaps a quarrel with her master, a smoldering resentment intensified by decades of devoted service. Elderly women of her standing can harbor surprising bitterness. And Dobbs, could he be untouched merely because he is an outsider to the family, Money can wield considerable influence. In some manner, Dobbs might have been approached and swayed. One thing is clear. Some message or command must have originated from beyond the village. Why else would there have been 5 months of immunity? The agents of the society were undoubtedly at work. Uncertain of Rosen's treachery, they delayed until they could trace the betrayal unambiguously to him. And then, once all doubts were dispelled, they must have sent their message to the infiltrator within, an order that simply stated, "Kill." "How dreadful," Jane Hollister remarked, shuddering at the thought. But how did the message arrive? That was the crux of my investigation, the key to unraveling this mystery. One of those 4 individuals must have been contacted or communicated with in some manner. I was certain there would be no delay. The moment the command was issued, it would be executed. This was a hallmark of the Schwarz hand. I delved into the matter with a rigor that may seem excessively meticulous. Who visited the cottage that morning? I left no stone unturned. Here is the list. He withdrew an envelope from his pocket, extracting a paper from within its confines. The butcher delivered a neck of mutton. Investigation confirmed his account. The grocer's assistant arrived with a packet of corn flour, 2 pounds of sugar, a pound of butter, and a pound of coffee. His story was also verified. The postman brought 2 circulars for Fraeline Rosen, a local letter for Gertrude, 3 letters for Dr. Rosen, 1 bearing a foreign stamp, and 2 letters for Mr. Templeton, one of which also bore a foreign stamp. Sir Henry paused, drawing forth a bundle of documents from the depths of the envelope. I believe it may intrigue you to examine these firsthand. They were either handed to me by the individuals involved or salvaged from the refuse. I should mention that expert analysis has confirmed the absence of invisible ink. Thus, no sensational revelations await us. The group gathered eagerly, their eyes scanning the catalogues, one from a respected nurseryman, the other from a prestigious London fur establishment. Among the papers were 2 bills addressed to Dr. Rosen, one for garden seeds from a local merchant and another from a London stationery firm. A letter addressed to him unfolded as follows. My dear Rosen, I've just returned from a visit to Dr. Helmuth Spieth. I recently encountered Edgar Jackson, who, along with Amos Perry, has returned from Tsingtao. In all honesty, I cannot say I envy them that journey. Please keep me updated on your news. And as previously cautioned, be wary of a certain individual. You know whom I refer to, even if you disagree. Yours, Georgian. Mr. Templeton's correspondence consisted of this bill from his tailor, as you can see, along with a letter from a friend in Germany, Sir Henry continued. Regrettably, he tore the latter to shreds during his walk. Lastly, we have a letter addressed to Gertrude. Dear Mrs. Swartz, we hope you can join us for the social this Friday evening. As the vicar expresses his hopes for your attendance, everyone is welcome. The recipe for the ham was delightful, and I thank you for sharing it. I hope this finds you in good health and that we will see you Friday. Yours faithfully, Emma Green. Dr. Lloyd smiled slightly, a reflection mirrored by Mrs. Blunt. I believe we can dismiss the last letter, he stated confidently. I had the same thought, Sir Henry replied, but I took the precaution of confirming the existence of Mrs. Green and the church social. One must always exercise caution, you know. That's precisely what our friend Miss Marple often reminds us, Dr. Lloyd remarked with a grin. You seem lost in thought, Miss Marple. What occupies your mind? Miss Marple jolted from her reverie. Oh, how foolish of me, she said. I was merely pondering why the word honesty in Dr. Rosen's letter was capitalized. Mrs. Blunt picked up the letter. So it is, she exclaimed. Oh. Yes, indeed, Miss Marple replied with a knowing smile. I anticipated you would notice. There's a distinct warning embedded in that letter, Colonel Blunt asserted. That caught my attention immediately. I observe more than you might think. Yes, a clear warning against whom, I wonder. There's an intriguing aspect to that letter, Sir Henry interjected. According to Templeton, Dr. Rosen opened it at breakfast and tossed it across to him, claiming he didn't recognize the sender. But it wasn't a man, Jane Hollister pointed out. It was signed Georgina. It's challenging to determine, Dr. Lloyd replied. It could be Georgie, but it certainly appears more like Georgina. Yet the handwriting strikes me as masculine. Fascinating, Colonel Blunt mused. His nonchalant toss across the table suggests he wanted to gauge someone's reaction. Whose face was he observing, the girl's or the man? Or perhaps even the cook, Miss Blunt suggested. She might have been present serving breakfast, but what puzzles me is, it's rather odd. She furrowed her brow over the letter. Miss Marple leaned closer, her finger brushing the paper as they exchanged hushed thoughts. Why did the secretary tear up the other letter? Jane Hollister asked suddenly, her brow knit in confusion. It seems, I don't know, it feels strange. Why would he have letters from Germany? Though, of course, if he's above suspicion, as you say. But Sir Henry didn't assert that, Miss Marple interjected quickly, her gaze darting up from her quiet conversation with Mrs. Blunt. He mentioned 4 suspects. That indicates Mr. Templeton is included. Am I correct, Sir Henry? Yes, Miss Marple. My experiences have taught me one crucial lesson. Never assume anyone is beyond suspicion. I provided reasons earlier as to why 3 individuals could potentially be guilty, despite their unlikely appearances. At that moment, I hadn't applied the same scrutiny to Charles Templeton. However, as I pursued the principle I just articulated, I was ultimately compelled to confront this. Every army, navy, and police force harbors a handful of traitors within its ranks, no matter how uncomfortable that truth may be. I examined the case against Charles Templeton with a dispassionate lens. I found myself asking the same questions Miss Hollister just posed. Why was he, unlike anyone else in the house, unable to produce the letter he received, a letter, moreover, bearing a German stamp? Why would he have correspondence from Germany? The last inquiry was innocuous, and I posed it directly to him. His answer was straightforward. His mother's sister had married a German, and the letter was from a German cousin. Thus, I uncovered something I had previously overlooked. Charles Templeton had connections in Germany. This revelation placed him squarely on the list of suspects, quite prominently, in fact. He is a young man I have always respected and trusted. Yet in the name of fairness and justice, I must concede he leads that list. But there lies the conundrum. I do not know, I cannot know, and likely I never shall. This matter transcends the mere pursuit of a murderer. It speaks to something infinitely more significant. It threatens to tarnish the reputation of an honorable man simply due to suspicion, a suspicion I cannot afford to disregard. Miss Marple cleared her throat softly and addressed Sir Henry with a gentle inquiry. So, Sir Henry, if I grasp your thoughts correctly, it is primarily this young Mr. Templeton who occupies your mind. Yes, in a manner of speaking. While one would assume that all 4 individuals are equally significant, reality tells a different story. Take Dobbs, for instance. Though I harbor some suspicion toward him, it is unlikely to impact his career. The village perceives Dr. Rosen's death solely as an accident. Gertrude is affected to a slightly greater extent. It must alter Fraeline Rosen's demeanor toward her, but perhaps that holds little weight for Gertrude. Now we arrive at the heart of the matter concerning Greta Rosen. She is a strikingly beautiful girl, and Charles Templeton, a handsome young man. For 5 months, they were entwined in each other's lives, free from external distractions. Naturally, they fell in love, even if they never explicitly voiced it. Then came the catastrophe. Just 3 months ago, shortly after my return, Greta visited me. She had sold her cottage and was preparing to return to Germany, having settled her uncle's affairs. Although she knew I had retired, she sought me out for a personal matter. Initially, she hesitated, but eventually she revealed her concerns. That letter with the German stamp, the one Charles had torn up, had haunted her thoughts. Was everything truly all right? She believed his story, yet a shadow of doubt loomed over her. If only she could know the truth. You see, it's the same sentiment, the desire to trust, yet a haunting suspicion that lingers, stubbornly pushed to the recesses of the mind. I spoke with her candidly, urging her to do the same. I inquired whether she had felt on the cusp of loving Charles, and if he felt the same for her. "I believe so," she replied, her voice tinged with sadness. "Oh yes, I know it was true. We were so blissful. Each day unfolded with contentment. We understood, both of us knew there was no rush, time was on our side. Someday he would profess his love and I would reciprocate. But now everything is different. A dark cloud has descended upon us. When we meet, we are at a loss for words. I suspect he feels as I do, each of us thinking, if only I were certain. That's why, Sir Henry, I implore you to assure me. You may be certain, whoever took your uncle's life, it was not Charles Templeton. Please say it. Oh, I beg you." "And by thunder," Sir Henry exclaimed, striking the table with his fist, "I couldn't offer her that reassurance. They will only drift further apart, with suspicion haunting them like an unshakable specter." He leaned back in his chair, his face weary and drawn, shaking his head in resignation. "There's little more that can be done unless—" Sitting upright again, a whimsical smile flickered across his face. "Unless Miss Marple possesses the key to unravel this. Don't you, Miss Marple? I suspect that letter may fall within your expertise, you know, the one regarding the church social. Doesn't it evoke a memory or insight that could illuminate the situation? Can't you assist these two young souls yearning for happiness?" Beneath the lightheartedness lay a genuine plea. Sir Henry had grown to respect the sharp intellect of this seemingly frail, old-fashioned lady. He gazed at her, hope shimmering in his eyes. Miss Marple cleared her throat and adjusted her lace delicately. "It does bring to mind Annie Poultney," she conceded. "Of course, the letter is crystal clear, both to Mrs. Blunt and myself. Not the church social letter, mind you, but the other one. You, living in London and lacking a gardener's eye, Sir Henry, might not have noticed." Sir Henry responded, puzzled. "Noticed what?" Mrs. Blunt reached for a catalogue, her eyes gleaming with enthusiasm as she read aloud. "Dr. Helmuth Spieth, pure lilac, a remarkably fine flower, borne on an exceptionally long and sturdy stem. Ideal for cutting and garden decoration. A striking novelty. Edgar Jackson, beautifully shaped, chrysanthemum-like blooms in a distinctive brick-red hue. Amos Perry, vivid red, highly decorative. Tsingtao, dazzling orange red, a showy garden plant and enduring cut flower. Honesty." "With a capital H, you'll recall," Miss Marple interjected. "Honesty, shades of rose and white, featuring enormous, perfectly shaped flowers." Mrs. Blunt slammed the catalogue down, exclaiming with fervor, "Dahlias." "And their initial letters spell death," Miss Marple elucidated. "But that letter was addressed to Dr. Rosen himself," Sir Henry countered. "That was the clever part," Miss Marple replied. "What would he do upon receiving a letter from an unknown sender, filled with unfamiliar names? Naturally, he would pass it to his secretary. Then, after all—" "Oh, no," Miss Marple interrupted. "Not the secretary. This is precisely what clarifies Dr. Rosen's innocence. He would never have allowed that letter to be discovered, nor would he have destroyed a letter addressed to him bearing a German stamp. His innocence is, if I may use the term, radiantly evident." "Then who?" "It seems almost certain as anything can be in this unpredictable world. Another individual was present at the breakfast table, and she would, quite naturally under the circumstances, reach for the letter and read it. And that would be that. Remember, she received a gardening catalogue in the same post." "Greta Rosen," Sir Henry murmured thoughtfully. "Then her visit to me." "Gentlemen often overlook the subtleties of human nature," Miss Marple observed, her tone steady and assured. "Regrettably, they tend to regard us older women as mere observers, as if our insights are nothing more than the whims of cats. Yet, the truth remains, we possess a profound understanding of our own gender. I have no doubt that a barrier existed between them. The young man experienced an inexplicable aversion, a feeling he could not conceal. Driven purely by instinct. It is my belief that the girl's visit was motivated by a desire to provoke suspicion towards the unfortunate Mr. Templeton. Your confidence in him wavered significantly after her appearance. I doubt it was anything she articulated, Sir Henry began. Gentlemen, Miss Marple interjected calmly, often miss the underlying currents at play. And that girl, he hesitated, his frustration evident. She commits a premeditated murder and walks away unscathed. Oh, Sir Henry, Miss Marple replied, her voice firm yet gentle. She is far from unscathed. Neither you nor I can truly believe that. Recall your earlier words. No, Greta Rosen will face her reckoning. To begin with, she associates with a most dubious crowd, blackmailers and terrorists, companions who will lead her to a dismal fate. As you rightly pointed out, we must not squander our thoughts on the guilty. It is the innocent who deserve our focus. Mr. Templeton, I suspect, will soon marry that German cousin of his. His act of tearing up her letter appears, well, it casts a shadow of suspicion, in a sense quite different from our earlier discussions. It seems as though he feared the other girl would notice or inquire about it. Yes, I sense a hint of romance lingering there. And then there's Dobbs, though, as you mentioned, I doubt it weighs heavily on his mind. His thoughts likely dwell on his aliveness. And let us not forget that poor Gertrude, the one who reminded me so much of Annie Poultney. Poor Annie, who dedicated 50 years to faithful service only to be suspected of misplacing Miss Lamb's will, a claim that could never be substantiated. It nearly shattered her loyal heart, and only after her passing did the will resurface, tucked away in the secret drawer of the tea caddy where old Miss Lamb had hidden it for safekeeping. Alas, too late for poor Annie. That's what troubles me about that elderly German woman. In old age, bitterness can take root all too easily. My sympathy lies more with her than with Mr. Templeton, who is young, attractive, and evidently a favorite among the ladies. You will write to her, won't you, Sir Henry? Reassure her that her innocence is beyond question. With her dear old master gone, she must be brooding, feeling the weight of suspicion pressing down on her. Oh, it's a thought too painful to bear. I will write, Miss Marple, Sir Henry promised, a curious look in his eyes. You know, I find it difficult to fully grasp your perspective. Your insights often diverge from my expectations. My perspective, I fear, is rather limited, Miss Marple replied with humility. I seldom venture beyond St. Mary Mead. And yet, you have unraveled what can only be deemed an international mystery, Sir Henry remarked with admiration. You have indeed solved it. I am convinced of that. Miss Marple felt a flush of modesty, a slight pride swelling within her. I believe I received a sound education for my time. My sister and I were taught by a German governess, a Fräulein. She was a sentimental soul. She introduced us to the language of flowers, a charming pursuit now forgotten. For instance, a yellow tulip signifies hopeless love, while a China aster conveys I die of jealousy at your feet. The letter was signed Georgian, which I recall is Dahlia in German, and that illuminated the entire matter. I wish I could remember the significance of Dahlia, but alas, that slips my mind. My memory is not what it once was. At any rate, it did not signify death. Indeed, how dreadful is that? Such sorrow exists in the world. There is, Mrs. Blunt agreed with a wistful sigh. It is fortunate we have flowers and friends to comfort us. Notice how she places us last, Dr. Lloyd remarked. A man once sent me purple orchids every night at the theater, Jane mused dreamily. I await your favors. That is what those signify, Miss Marple responded brightly. Sir Henry cleared his throat, a peculiar expression crossing his face as he turned away. Miss Marple suddenly exclaimed, I've remembered. Dahlias symbolize treachery and misrepresentation. Remarkable, Sir Henry declared. Absolutely remarkable. And with a deep sigh, he reflected on the intricacies of life. The end.